Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Jim Atkinson. I am the Director of Programs and Services here at Art Pride, New Jersey. I want to welcome you to this morning's Jersey Arts Marketers virtual meeting, where we'll be talking about the navigating shifts in the social media landscape. We're going to be joined in just a minute by Chris Rocco and Chelsea Clemens from Spark Creative. But before we do that, just wanted to do some housekeeping to let you know that we are recording today's session, so you can feel free to share that with any of your colleagues that weren't able to join us today. If you need closed captioning, that is available via the link at the bottom of your screen. We are in a meeting format today. This is not a webinar, and we did that intentionally because we wanted to allow folks to have the opportunity to interact more than what we're allowed to do with the webinar. But we do have a pretty big room today, so I would ask you to please remain muted unless you're speaking. If you do have a question, use the raise hand tool. That is again at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom format. I'll call on you, and then you can unmute or come on camera, ask your question and interact that way. And then when you're done, if you could please just remute yourself again. You can also use the chat feature, but again, I would encourage you, since we have this opportunity, you don't have to be texting your questions. You can go ahead and just ask them live, and I'm sure that Chris and Chelsea would be able to answer you that way. I do have a few updates on what's happening with Art Pride's Discover Jersey Arts campaigns that are coming up. We are currently promoting Women's History Month. We're doing that on jerseyarts.com, as well as through our email and social channels. Our next campaign launches on April the 1st. That'll be our Spring Arts campaign. We are currently accepting events to feature in that campaign, as well as stories that you can pitch to us. You can do that by logging in to the artpridenj.org member portal and accessing your My Art Pride account. That's where you send us content that we feature on the front end of jerseyarts.com, which is our business to consumer site. I will say that when we talk about stories, they come in the forms of articles, podcasts, and full video packages. And we just published our 250th episode of the Jersey Arts podcast. So that was exciting. And again, we're still looking for events that we can feature, both either just as a standalone event on the featured events section of the website, or taking it deeper by doing either an article, a podcast, or a video package around it. And again, because I know some folks are still getting used to our new system, you can do that by logging into your My Art Pride account on the artpridenj.org member portal. If you have any questions about how all that works, if you're on jerseyarts.com, there's an industry links section at the bottom that sort of explains how the functionality works and what you have to do to get featured on the website, because we are still getting a lot of questions with folks adapting to the new system. But definitely want to take this opportunity to remind folks that that's what's going on. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Chris Rocco and Chelsea Clemens from Spark Creative.
All right, good morning, everybody. Jim was kind enough to just do a quick poll this morning that I think we can trigger in the beginning, just really asking everyone what social media networks they're currently embracing or using, just to help a little bit with like guiding some of the conversation. Of course, throughout, Jim will be pausing to take questions. I will say this, social media is an unusual topic in that there'll probably be as many questions as there are answers in this. Pulling this together was kind of like a moment of pause to sit back and be like, okay, what are we finding across our network? So I'll talk a little bit about use some case studies today to illustrate that, but we are going to pretty much be looking for some input and some, visceral firsthand experience of what you and your marketing folks are having across some of these networks. So, this poll's quite handy and fast, and looks as it would be expected. It's kind of nice to see TikTok approaching 30% here. Jim, I guess everyone sees these poll results as we do.
Yeah, I just shared the
Yeah.
results. So everyone should be seeing the results of the poll here.
Got it. So we have a few people hopping on Threads and Blue Sky. It's about kind of where we thought that engagement would be. Um, Other is interesting. We talked a little bit about before we started the meeting today that there are some artists, probably maybe more so than arts organizations, that are starting to use like Reddit and Discord and some other sort of like uh, subculture specific or even video or gaming specific avenues for promotion. You know, they're full of highly active users that are search driven, so that's probably not a surprise to anybody. So maybe that's what some of this other is here. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit later. Um, so yeah, the typical channels are all here and represented. So yeah, on some of these, we'd be interested to hear feedback, especially on Threads and Blue Sky in terms of adoption and things like that. All right, so I'm going to set this a little bit aside for me. I'll leave that up there. Okay, so good morning. So one of the things that I just want to start out with, not in terms of myth busting, but just to shed a little bit of light. So we did research from our own client base, sort of our best practices that we maintain here. We pretty much evaluate things quarterly around here. We go through our sort of January housekeeping, and then we worked with some of our digital provider vendors that do some of our paid social and had them also look at our organic trends and organic trends in arts and culture industries. So all that kind of got wrapped up into this. The second thing I'll say is there's way too much information in this thing, and no one wants to hear me talk for an hour. So what I'll probably do is I'm going to do a decent amount of reading to not miss anything. Jim will pause for some Q&A as we go along. And then when things get a little bit more bulky, there are some areas of this presentation that are more like tips and tricks and things to remember. I might just like hop across some of them so we don't sit here and you know, put everyone to sleep. So that said, let's just start with a few things. So overall, with the political environment we're in and sort of the social environment that was sort of kind of kicked off with TikTok and then some sort of deregulation activities that Meta did on Facebook and Instagram, I think there's a little bit of this like suggested paranoia that in your timelines and in our circles of friends and people who appreciate the arts, people are somewhat angry or charged and jumping ship and things like that. I think there is a component of that. I think there are people that, albeit have every right to be upset about what's going on, and maybe those are the people moving into Threads and Blue Sky or taking social media hiatuses or vacations for 30 days, things of that nature. I think that's all going on and all true. But I wanted to start off on a positive note saying that what we're finding there are a lot of opportunities. We're able to maintain growth and engagement in some of the content creativity that we try to put out there. But then at the same time, throttling is a real thing. So Meta is and other social networks, they want the advertising dollar. So all that organic traffic and upswing we enjoyed coming out of COVID was to amass followers and to amass likes on our pages. That really benefited the networks to corral those people together. And now what's happening is they're turning down that volume. So you might be seeing less sharing and likes and engagement overall, but that doesn't mean that new people aren't being targeted by the algorithms and being brought into the fold. So this will be a mix today of kind of like pro and con a little bit. So these are just some like high level points we wanted to make. First off, what's really changing is social is much more of a media outlet. Pardon me. At this point, it's really like the way the algorithms is working, the way that existing followers are being evaluated in terms of their data points, they're looking to prioritize content viewing over basically conversation. It's not that we can't combat that, and we'll talk about some of the ways we can do that today, but that's what's slowly happening. People are scrolling and or doom scrolling, and taking in video static image content as a leisure activity. So align it right up there with like TV viewing. So, and the second point kind of reiterates that a little bit. What it's more focusing on is saying, however, if you are creating content that rides that train, there's a much better chance that not only your existing followers will see it, but that Facebook and Meta, like the whole Meta universe, will pick up on that and promote it to like-minded audiences and individuals. So you're benefiting your chances of at least being viewed on the audiences you already have, but they can share that content out beyond your scope with possibly new customers or new potential visitors. So at the last point to make here kind of builds on that is basically something that is really compelling or creative can travel much farther than even previously. It doesn't matter if people aren't actively liking or commenting on it, that asset that you produced, video, a podcast, a story, that is very, very creative and latches on to either a trend or a specific target audience, that will get carried by Meta regardless. And we've seen some of that in some of the case studies that we'll show you today. And I said some of these would be dense with information. This is also so when this PDF goes around to everyone on this call today, you have some sort of brick and mortar things to look back on in a 6-page packet. So again, it's less engagement and more consumption. They're basically prioritizing content. And they're looking at their audiences and seeing, okay, well, where are these audiences that would be interested in this viewing? Because their job in the end is to keep you on the channel as long as possible. So it doesn't matter if they currently don't like or follow you. If your content is a good match and they want to use it, that's where you'll be able to get your message out there through whatever throttling they may be doing. Part and parcel to that is video is king. This is not new. But if you can imagine in, less scrolling, less reading, it's not that carousels don't still work and static images can have great success, particularly on paid. They perform very well. But video by far, even short form, even small 30-second reels or TikToks or, 3 to 5 minute short, online documentaries of something that's happening in your space or in your performance venue. That is where you'll get someone, storytelling is the rule. I mean, people remember stories more than they remember anything else. So the more you can put yourself in that storytelling space, the better it is. And what better way to do it than video? So it's nothing that everyone doesn't already know and talk about. I know this space like the back of my hand, as you all do. Dollars are hard to come by and it can be expensive, but there are other ways, maybe future summers down the road, or things that, Jan probably already covered, of doing it a little less expensively. I mean, there are things obviously you could do on your iPhone that was like not available even 10 years ago. So the third one for organic exposure being reduced. This is critical and it's a real thing. We see it across even some of our non-arts clients. We had a sort of a quick round a few weeks ago where, we were in a winter season with some typical promotions and the likes and shares were really slow going in the beginning. And they weren't used to that. And when we really looked at it, it was like, okay, it's repeat content from a prior year, which can be more difficult. But it's also just the general MO of 24 going into 25. They want to push everyone into paid. And I think, just my own opinion, one of the ways they're manipulating that dynamic is we all got used to it from 2021 to 2024 of really spending a lot of time investing staff time and resources on filling that content space on our social channels. And we were getting high results because they were allowing it to happen. Now that it's being throttled back, it's almost like they let us have it for a really long time. And now they're saying you're going to pay. So that's my 2 cents. We do see the throttling as a real thing, but I think there are some marketing and monetization reasons that that's happening. This is another thing, and we'll talk about this a little later. It's something that we all have to monitor. As busy as everyone is, whether you subscribe to Wired Magazine or you're reading tech journals or following, even general tech news, it's our individual responsibilities to watch the networks that we're on and know what their policies are. In case you are finding yourself in a live conversation on social with someone that's like, what's going on here? Why do you guys even still have a presence on this piece of garbage? There's the gamut of comments and commentary that I'm sure people are already dealing with. You need to be prepared, I guess, a little bit with a stance on that, and ways to comment about it, but more so monitoring it, because these are where you've put your investments. So we can see here that some of the TikTok folks, that's close to 26%. And I know from our experience, that is that's the workhorse. I mean, you can obviously produce vertical video and include it on Reels and on Instagram, but when it comes down to it, that's a big investment. So yeah, if something that's going to get canceled or canned or taken over or outsourced, you want to know what those dynamics are. So in fighting all of that, platform diversity is key. Seems here that people generally are doing that to the degrees that you can. I think that Blue Sky and Threads are tools. There are more people. It's yet another. They've yet to obviously have big time traction. So balance your percentage of consumption with how much maybe you're able to invest in it. I think it's even good just for visual PR to show your constituents and your followers that, you are making efforts to expand and you do realize that some things could be politically charged. You want to meet them where they are. So they're not high intensity workhorses. So they're good things to get involved in. They can certainly reuse assets that you're already producing. So the broader reach means lower barriers. And basically what that means is because Meta is on the hunt for your content, they literally are. So the more creative you're making it, the more interesting it is. If it's filled with, sort of documentary type slants, or it's a deep dive artist feature, they're looking for that because they're trying to keep people on channels that even aren't yours. They want hangout in timeline. So by doing that, if you're providing content that's out there, you could become the flavor of the month, day, or the week for a specific group that they're targeting, that they're looking to engage. And this is just putting your brand in front of those eyeballs. So it's a lower barrier to entry in that you didn't have to pay for it and you didn't have to work really hard to get those eyeballs, but you have to work on what that content is. And it's going to be different, obviously, for everyone on this call.
Chris, I
Jim,
think this might be a good chance to pause for a sec.
Yeah,
So, first, I have a question, right? So, in the past, I know with social, shorter term video tended to be more applicable than like putting up a 5-minute video, like something like on Facebook, right? As a teaser to link them over. Is that still the case, or has that shifted?
right now, if you look at anything that we produce or anything we help a client produce, short form is very much involved in paid just because of skippability concerns. I don't really have an answer that would say it's better or worse in an organic sensibility, but from our conversations with Orange and talking with Chelsea, it seems like the longer form, deeper dives are less out there, and that's why they're a little bit more in demand, and they might be having more reach. You can see that definitely in the Visit South Jersey channels when we have something that's longer, it is more engaged. I imagine it's also more out there, out of our universe, in front of new people that might want to engage Visit South Jersey. So I don't know. I don't have like a real answer to that. When we deal with short form video, mostly 15 seconds with a front-ended 7-second mark that's normally in paid for either YouTube or something on Meta. So I would say my recommendation, knowing, you know, the financial restraints of everything, is produce what you can and be very strategic about it. So if there's something big coming in your doors this season, you may want to say, hey, listen, months in advance, we're going to get ahead of this. We're going to use this as our crown jewel of, you know, our fall season or our spring season, and we're going to make something longer. And then you can always make smaller short form video versions of that to post as reminders to people, because you kind of always get, you know, you don't want to continue to bomb someone with a 1 to 5 minute video. So if there is the wherewithal, I would make both. But there's nothing we've got like tried, true, and tested to say either way.
And then I wanted to just pose the question to the room. Has anyone seen changes that they think are of note within how they're using their social channels to engage audiences? Has anyone seen anything in the past 30 days, 6 weeks, that has made them change their strategy, or at least are them making them thinking about changing their strategy? That might be useful to have a conversation with the room. And if not, that's fine. But if you have, I want to give this some space to breathe a little bit. So just, if you have anything you want to add here, just go ahead and raise your hand. If not, we'll go ahead and move on.
Lauren?
Lauren, yeah.
Oh, Lauren, your microphone.
You're muted. Yeah.
Thank you. I've been having internet trouble, so I appreciate that. One of the things we've been really careful about is just watching the national political climate and thinking about what we're saying. Unfortunately, we have to think about what we're saying and doing. And I think we're still looking at focusing on like our EDI initiatives and posting content that's related to them, but we're not necessarily calling it out as a particular initiative. So for example, like we're still going to post for like Women's History Month. We posted for Black History Month, but we didn't specifically say like, this is for Black, you know what I mean? So I think we're just kind of keeping a pulse on that. And we are just claiming an account on Blue Sky just in case. But we were still advised by our advertising agency to continue to use Meta because that's where everybody really still is. So
yeah, that's a very good point about the content. And this is actually a conversation not really arts and culture related, but with some of the things that Target's experiencing, and you know, rack that straight up against how Costco resisted just in the sort of the DEI conversations. It's really tricky, right? Because I mean, it's not like it's making, I think it's making corporations, and I don't know if it, you know, trickles down this far, but they're compromising what they may truly want to say or truly believe in, at the risk of, you know, becoming part of that conversation in a way of becoming a target. So I feel, and maybe it's naive to feel, that we are in somewhat of a safe space to, like you say, still put it out there and everyone can still be who we are, but we're not trying to hook on to polarize us. And so I think that would be, you know, the 7th block, maybe adding on here is, I think the content is critical to be deeper scrutinized for sure, and the comments made. And that's something that, you know, as an action plan with just PR and community relations in your organization, you can have maybe those talking points ready. And it sounds like you might have in the back of your mind at least, oh God, if this were to happen, what would we say? So no, it's a very good point. It's a very good point. When I'm talking content here, it's very myopic. We're talking about arts, culture, performance content, but yeah, we also have active roles in what we do in, you know, our social and ethical landscape. So that's a very good point. Thank
Let me
you.
follow that up and ask the question: has anyone seen any kind of pushback on their social channels? Yeah, go ahead, Lauren. Yeah.
feel like I'm going to give some other thoughts here. So we did a post after the election, just acknowledging that some people may not feel welcome, and we were very careful about how we worded it. And we got a lot of pushback. So we had to turn off our comments. And it all occurred after I think we posted late in the day. It all occurred overnight. So we ended up making the difficult decision to turn off well, I don't know if it was a difficult decision, but we made the decision to turn off the comments. We gave some thought to it, and we felt that that was the best way to handle things. And, we just kept an eye on everything. And when we post content that might be considered divisive to some audiences, we're just really careful about monitoring it and then raising it to like the executive level if we feel like it's become like a really difficult, acrimonious engagement situation.
Yeah, I see Tanisha, who's our marketing communications person here. And I know, Tanisha, you did a really good job a while ago about setting up community guidelines. And
Yeah.
that's something to fall back on. I don't know if you want to touch on that or talk about any experiences that we've seen.
Yeah, I was just trying to find the raise hand feature. Yeah, so we, even prior to this current administration, we lean into Pride Month, we lean into all the heritage months and such. And every month, as from 2020 to now, every year is a little bit more vitriol, a little bit more trollage. So we just have community guidelines that is pinned to the top of our socials. And when something comes up and someone is very much like trolling, I delete them. I delete that post only, and I repost the community guidelines, which basically means this is a space where art generates feelings, and that's okay. That's what art's supposed to do. And it's okay to talk about how you feel about the art. It's not okay to vilify da 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 da. So that's what we've been doing in terms of our socials for the past, what are we in 2025? 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years or something like that. I have, however, been experiencing feedback from email marketing, and emails coming back with, comments like, in opposition to Black History Month. I haven't seen anything yet for Women's History Month. And I fully expect to see stuff for Pride Month. And so I am currently writing kind of a community guidelines, if you will, for email marketing, so that it doesn't say you can't say what you feel, because art and creativity churns feelings, but it says you can't bring around a cloud to rain on my parade. No, but you can't, just be inappropriate about it. Full stop.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that. Has anybody else encountered anything like this that we should want to talk about with the group? I know Chris has a lot to get to, but I wanted to pause here and give this a little space. But I think we can we can go ahead and move on.
This is good. It actually helps give context even to where we're going. Do you want me to continue on?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okay, so just if this is helpful, and like I said, everyone will get this after the call. We thought we would just dive in and map out a few things that are channel specific. So I'm going to guess everyone was and has been watching the TikTok scenario play out. I think they've been given a reprieve, I forget for the number of days or number of months, till they go back and revisit this again. It's all that being said, even when it was blacked out for a little bit, it was like the news of the day and people were losing their minds. So right now, I think it's a safe platform, safe platform for participation. Whether or not some sort of IT governmental analysis determines that all of our data has been used for like nefarious purposes or something like that, like who the heck knows? I feel like I click on my terms of service and I agree to my iTunes thing every year without even blinking. So I may have sold my genetics to someone at this point. So I think that that's something that'll flesh out over time, but right now it's still active. It's one of the most active on our paid account side. For budget, it's one of our highest performers in their targeting's not so hot in New Jersey. They've still limited to 4 counties for paid, but they do Philly DMA and New York DMA. The consumption is crazy. The budget usually leaks and it's completed within days or if not less than a week. So it's definitely active and still an important tool. For in the metaverse, I think the big news was the fact checking and seeing Zuckerberg and others from his teams, in front of Congress, in front of various organizations saying, hey, listen, we think we're going to move to community policing here. And we're seeing this roll itself out for the past like 6 weeks. I haven't personally noticed great changes. I do feel I'm pretty much only getting things that I agree with, which we know everyone Meta likes to keep everyone in their bubbles. So that's definitely happening. So I think we're going to have to see how this whole fact checking and moderation plays out. This is probably one of the ones, Twitter or X being the most on fire, but I think Meta is suffering from, I'm going to jump ship. This isn't for me anymore. These people are wrong, but we're not seeing it in the numbers. X is probably the most volatile. We don't have a lot of people on our client base that use it. I always kind of joke that X is sort of primary for like celebrity and, big brands, but, I'm sure in the lobbying and political arenas in the state of New Jersey, it's definitely useful to maintain an account and maintain communication with legislators. So I think it's still maybe a necessary evil. I'd be curious maybe to hear what people have to say about that before we hop off this slide. And then we wanted to include sort of the 2X alternatives that our poll is obviously showing is gaining a little bit of traction. Our college business is hopping on those. I would imagine in the months ahead, we'll probably be opening the accounts for all of our clients. If not for anything, just a just in case factor. So that might be something that you want to consider doing. Blue Sky definitely markets its sort of like user control and lockdown privacy. As I understand, it's American controlled technology and ownership. So that may up, how comfortable people feel on that channel. Threads is an X alternative, but it's still a Meta product. So that kind of rides the middle of like when everyone was getting on 12 months ago and getting our accounts, and it's like, it still suffered the Meta baseball bat a little bit. But it is being used and it is quite easy to use. It's good user interface, so can't hurt to be there. So yeah, Jim, I don't know if you want to open it quickly does anyone have specific comments or experiences on, some jolts or shocks that they've had either in Meta or the X universe?
Yeah.
Oh, Tanisha's hand went up.
I'm trying to phrase this in a way. To my mind, and to my both to my mind and to my experience in the spaces, is really about, for me, the way I engage and or think about how I'm going to engage with the platform is in large part based on who my audiences are. I think that is for all of us, I think. And as a service organization that leans strongly into diversity, equity, and inclusion, and leans strongly into an equitable playing field for all of the representation of the arts, from visual to performative, from underserved communities to highly served communities. The spaces that most reflect that mores are the spaces that I advocate we participate in, which is why, for me, X doesn't make the mark. because it does not have it's just the mores of that space is not in alignment with the mores of our organization. Whereas while Meta has done its specialness, the majority of our audiences still live there, and like you said earlier, Chris, like it's still serving things to people, their bubbles. Our people are still in their bubbles for the large part, and while we get our audiences in this space, particularly, we have a lot of left and right-leaning arts lovers. We all know we have left-leaning and right-leaning arts lovers. It is in this space where we, again, going back to the community guidelines, we kind of reinforce our mores without silencing. But it's still a space that is, for lack of a better word, balanced enough that we can have that back and forth. Whereas like in X, it's just like there's the whole system is bent towards a moral compass that's just not DEI. Which is, you know, it's burden words, you know, sinful words in today's environment, but is what Art Pride stands strongly behind. So that's kind of how I have been, you know, operating. And like in TikTok, you know, we're not on TikTok yet because our audiences don't really do our audiences don't do TikTok, so that's like wasted effort. Like, you know, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So we've been leaning into our LinkedIn because we have a lot of, you know, you guys are business folks, right, who want to know how to engage with us as Art Pride New Jersey and how promotions and marketing and all that. And that's a better space for us to invest our time and effort in than say Blue Sky, opening up new to Blue Sky, or opening up new to TikTok. Full stop.
No, it's a really good point. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing that is not very different than watching Tesla stock fall. You know, it's the leadership is greatly the channel in this case. So I think if people are getting good or bad vibrations from that leadership, it sort of it taints the channel a little bit. It sort of affects what we think of posting there, what we say there, and whether people are there or not, because they just, it's not something they want to embrace. I think in the Zuckerberg camp, in the Meta material, or the Meta channels, it wasn't anything outlandish or crazy. It was basically saying, we think we're doing a poor job policing content and doing fact checking. So we're going to try a community-based solution. It probably also save them a ton of money and probably lessen their accountability. And they're going to ride it and see how it goes. Now, what does that mean for people who know how to infiltrate political messages or even dangerous messages through paid targeting? Yeah, it could still happen. So I've yet to see it, because I also think this change really happened after sort of the election cycle. So I think we should all just be keeping an eye on what has it meant in our feeds and what are people saying about it. So far, I don't see the swath of negativity that we may have been expecting. Does anyone else want to comment on something?
Yeah, there's two other questions that came through on chat. I'm going to actually, Kristen Lee, you have a question you wanted to ask about organizations on TikTok and the results compared to Meta. Are you?
Yeah, thank you. I was just curious, like from an outcome standpoint, like what results you're seeing that might complement those Meta strategies. It's not one that we've turned on yet for our organization, but if you know there's a tremendous value add, I'd love to explore it. But I'm just curious what others have kind of seen to date.
Kristen, who are you with too?
The Morristown Theater Company. I'm on the board.
Okay. All right.
Thanks,
So so just for a theater slant. So we don't have anyone in our client roster that has made a massive investment in this. I believe our tourism is thinking or starting of doing it. I know both colleges are up there doing it. And what I'm basically saying is I'm prefacing, and I'm going to steal from Tanisha, who said, is the juice worth the squeeze? It is a large investment in time to pull off videos, and you sort of need a content strategy as you would for any other channel that you're using. So I totally appreciate the question, and or our agency is one of the lesser qualified to answer it, because we're not viscerally in the weeds on it. However, we do produce a lot of tall video that ends up going on to a lot of these channels, and they do perform well. So I think it's a key performance indicator measure to say, what would your organization put out there as doing well, and what does that look like for you? So if there are, and I'm sure there's some organizations on this call that, are 30, 50, TikTok posts in, and it's been one of their better platforms for engagement, maybe even specifically with audiences under 40. Although, as we know, it seems to be ageless at this point. Like, I can't get my mother off TikTok. So I think I appreciate the question. I think performance is a hard thing for me to gauge, because I think the outcomes of what you're looking for will be different for every organization. I would say it can't hurt, definitely scoop up the channel. And you can even use your other social channels to feed over to TikTok and co-promote. So one of the first things that we did for the colleges was let people know the channel was open to get everyone hopped over there. But even at this point, the content is almost like once or twice a month. It's a very hard thing to keep up on. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's like the scope of what I know.
Let me step in, and I see your hand is up, Lauren. Is your question directly related to TikTok, or is it something different?
No, I was just gonna share some insights, if that's helpful.
It is. Let me just pause you for 1 second there. I want to know if anybody is actively using TikTok, and if they are, what their content strategy and what their ROI has been on it. So is there anyone on the call that is really vested in that channel? No? Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, so it was actually a comment on that exact topic, and
Oh, okay, great.
yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we've found that works really well is that if we produce video for another channel, we just repost it on there so that we're not creating extra work for ourselves. Another thing that seems to work really well on there is capitalizing on trends that you're seeing. So like, for example, we did if anyone saw like Gen Z writes the marketing script. It was a
Yes.
trend. If anyone's seen that trend, we did a really great post on that had really strong engagement. But yeah, I mean, we try to post consistently. It's just hard because you have to do so much more work to create the content. But we have been able to cultivate a nice audience there. It's small but growing. And again, it's just that it's not as regular as our content elsewhere. I couldn't quite say how regular it is, just because I'm not on there all the time like my colleague that does social medias, but I do think like capitalizing on trends there is definitely the way to go if you are going to create some content and then just reusing it on the other channels. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's across all social, like anything you can do to get on a trend, and getting on a trend isn't a month, it's actually days and weeks. So you have to be kind of like quick on your feet to pick up on something. So kudos to you guys to be able to follow that, because sometimes when you notice the trend is gone. It's left the station. But using that to network back and to circle back to populate TikTok audiences and get more followers absolutely is a way to do it. I will say that in the ad space, we use TikTok like crazy, both in the Philly DMA and the New York DMA for targeting. They haven't opened up county by county yet. They're promising to, which will help you with your ad dollar. Right now, there's only 4 counties in North Jersey where you can do county-specific targeting, which actually works for our Pride and DGA currently.
And then we have another question from Tanya from SJCA. You had a question about engagement with newsletters.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, we've been noticing that our newsletter is like very suddenly doing very abysmally, where we had a lot of like engagement, click-throughs, reads, and it has started tanking. And I'm wondering if, because we haven't really changed the format, and it just started going downhill. I'm wondering if it's a case of information overload where perhaps people are just doom scrolling all day and reading all sorts of other things that by the time they go to their email and check a newsletter, it's like, more stuff to read. I can't be bothered with this. I'll check it later, and then later never shows up. So I'm wondering if other people are experiencing this sort of issue that we're having. One of the things that we've talked about doing is doing like short reels to post on our social media pages, but then now my new concern with that, based on what I've just heard, is that and I don't know if I heard it correctly, that the short form videos do better if they're paid um versus longer form videos. And we're a small team, so we don't really have the capacity to do like super, super, super engaging stuff. But we were thinking of doing reels that have the newsletter highlights and posting those and then redirecting people back to the newsletter. But it's like a weird situation that we don't really know what is causing it.
That's a good point. I want to make sure I answer both questions too. On the short form video space, it literally is do what you feel. It's not that they perform better on social. It's just in our agency, that's our primary use for short form. But anything that is produced does get posted on someone's organic channel eventually on the client side. So that is truly a trial and error. You'd have to see how your audiences react. To your last quick point about doing something creative with a reel and using animations, even if you guys are using Canva or something like that, that can be a nice way of getting small digestible nuggets of information out there. That is one thing we are seeing as a trend, which could pivot a little bit back to your newsletter question. And listen, we've got newsletters that scroll for 6 pages for different municipalities that we can't touch because that's just the way that it is. And then we have ones that are short, almost blast size, where you really are giving them like 3 bits of information. And those seem to be performing well in our experience. Sometimes you have to do more of them and it becomes a scheduling thing for you to map out what your content workflow is going to be with that. So that's something that I know affects readability on open rate. I think quickly, I'm trying to watch time too. Tanisha and I worked on the new Discover Jersey Arts email, and I don't mean to like call you out, Tanisha, on the carpet, but that is a very digestible email. It's sort of like middle of the road. And I think Tanisha's performance on that is fairly well. I don't know if it's something, Jim, you can even comment on, but I would think that would be a good example of kind of like the middle of the 3 bears. It's valuable content. It has links to their value-added content for podcasting and video. And it does highlight their feature stories and stuff. So Tanisha, are you seeing like decreases since we launched it with the new brand, or what's your feeling on that?
Our open rate has so no decreases in terms of our open rates and in terms of our engagement, so click-throughs.
Okay.
Full stop. I was just,
Oh, yeah.
I was like, do I expound? Like, no, that's the answer to the direct question.
Yeah, most of ours in-house here are remaining the same or growing. We have not seen a drop off. Although sometimes it'll happen is we might have 50 to 100 users cycle in and cycle out like that. There's always sort of like the flowing river that happens. But yeah, Tanya, I'm not sure if there's like a bulletproof answer to that. I would look at girth of information. I would look at your frequency, if it's once a week, if it's bi-weekly. We have found that the less an email is going out, sometimes the open rate can be higher. But that might not suit the timing that you need in terms of pushing stuff out there. And I think lastly, some of the creative thinking you're doing is, well, can we get that information out in a different way on some of our other channels, I think is something to definitely consider.
Yeah, we just have one other
Jim?
anonymous question that came in on the newsletter front. This person's asking that they've been directed to start putting video content in their newsletters. Is anyone else doing this, and do they find it effective?
In embedding links, I'm assuming.
Embedding links, yeah, versus trying to, because you really can't embed video.
No. Some people will do like an animated GIF that's like a clip of the video as
Right.
like a teaser. I don't believe we're currently doing that right now for anyone. I know DGA obviously does because they'll put in for Jersey Arts TV, so the links are there. Anyone else on the call have direct experience in that? Or results?
Lauren, you have some feedback on that?
Sure, I feel like I'm dominating the conversation, so
It's
sorry
okay.
about that. We've done GIFs in the bottom of our email because obviously we want people to click on the top and buy tickets. But we did a really nice GIF for our Night Forms exhibition, which was a nighttime exhibition we held the past couple of years. And it was like very bright and colorful, and that seemed to be really engaging for people. And then we've also linked to like video content that we've done. And, I've looked at the heat map for our email newsletters and it performed really well. In fact, the video content, more people clicked on that than the call to action, which probably, I mean, depends on what your goal for the email is. But it does do well when we include it. It's just a question of like, what is your goal for the email? So
Right. But at some point, any engagement's good engagement, right? It's at some
yeah.
level, yeah.
Yeah.
I do see we're cutting, time is
Yeah.
coming up short, so I'm gonna go ahead, Chris. I know we're looking like we're only about halfway through your presentation, but if you want
Yeah,
to jump into some of the other points we want to make sure we touch on in our last
Sure.
few minutes together.
Yeah, then and I can sort of save the final slide. I'll skim through this a little bit. So basically, this is just across our client base that we are seeing general success across the board, even with throttling. And that can be that our follower base is very tuned in. They're very data appropriate for the content that we're putting there. And then that's also getting served out of the follow universe, out in the world of the timelines that are attracting new people to our channels. Facebook has mixed results, high reach, but sometimes lower engagement. So again, the shift to that, this is a media player more than like a place for people to chat and contribute to your content. So that kind of supports that dynamic. Just quick definitions for everyone, just in terms of what the difference between engagement and reach. I'm sure most of us know that. But engagement is like physical activity, and reach is a very passive metric in that it's people who saw it on their timeline one or multiple times. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know, and I feel so bad, Chelsea, if we want to do if we want to hop across these case studies quickly. I'm looking at the 5-minute mark, wondering if it's not maybe more appropriate for everyone to read at their leisure, but we got permission to share this backend data with everyone. At a high level, Chelsea, I'm just doing this to summarize quickly, but at a high level, all cylinders are firing and everything's performing well. We have a little bit of a interesting thing going on in the film office where our reach from 24 to 25 fell off a little bit, but I also want to say that we don't publish a lot of content on there. It was initially a big wave and now it's calming down a little bit. We're much more populating the film office databases with available locations and things like that. It's more of a website based project currently. Also, to throw out there for anyone who wants to log on to take a look at the South Jersey Film Office, you can submit your venue or venues for use in theater or film, just like you do the state of New Jersey Film Office. We're like a subset of that film office that runs down here to hit Southern New Jersey, a little bit of Delaware, and work with Philadelphia. So if there's anyone who, would be interested in having something filmed there or shot there, definitely check out the website. So across the board, from 24 to 25, you see these increases. Chelsea, if there's anything specific you want to call out from your prep this morning, maybe we could right now. We've got Visit South Jersey, South Jersey Film Office, and Symphony NC.
Well, my takeaway from the case studies that we have here, and I think when you take a look at it, you might feel the same, is the importance of adapting your strategy to each platform. They're all important and they all serve their own purpose, especially with Instagram and Facebook. While Instagram is really important for building engagement, Facebook is still really powerful for reach. So my takeaway is that tailoring your approach to each platform is the key. And I definitely want to move away from Meta just yet.
Yeah, it's still, with any of the storytelling going on or the vibes that are out there, it's still a heavy hitter and a heavy performer. And I can just say personally, and Chelsea, we talked about this yesterday, we haven't really seen a lot of things haven't been going to pot. I'm not getting served a lot of garbage, even though it is a more passive consumption vehicle right now. And I'm not getting a lot of politically charged things currently. So I think it's still a safe bet. I think Zuckerberg had to be at the table and shake the hands of the president and be on board in a political nature, but I think the platform will survive. Pam, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I got one last question, and then we'll do some housekeeping at the end here. So Pam?
Okay, so I'm Symphony NC, one of the case studies, and we're the grateful beneficiaries of the great work from Chris Rocco and Chelsea Clemens. And we have seen a tremendous growth in engagement in particularly Instagram, but Facebook too. And we did use another firm before. And, the bottom line for everybody is it bringing people to your doors? Is it selling tickets? And for Symphony NC, absolutely. We did a lot more standardized marketing prior to really going full force into social media marketing, meeting Facebook and Instagram this past year. And we're a small venue, 650 seats in the city of Camden, Saturday night performances, a lot of barriers to concert precipitation. And we have seen where we'll have 200 tickets sold 2 weeks before the performance, and then go all the way up to over 500 in those last 2 weeks, all driven by Facebook and Instagram. And I'm collecting at least 40 to 50 brand new names coming to our organization every time. So
That's
it is effective. And thank you to Chris and to Chelsea.
Thanks,
Oh,
Pam.
God, it's the quality of the product, right? I mean, that's what it is. It's like, I think, everyone here on this call believes to their bones that every single thing they produce and do is so important, which is what makes art travel and get to the masses. And I think that it's just the frustrating part of like how to put that in front of the eyes and do it with enthusiasm. And I think Laura mentioned before, doing a video clip and converting that into a GIF, especially if it's something really colorful and really attractive. I mean, not every piece of art, especially on the performance side, is happy, uplifting, and beautiful. It's meant to tell a story and to reflect struggle. But I think how it's presented and how you market and package it is really key, because that's what is going to say, okay, we want to put this media from this arts and cultural organization. We want to take it out of their follower network and we want to put it in front of other people. So I think that's really, we mentioned content strategy a couple of times today. I think it's critical to have that mapped out, have key performance indicators, keep KPIs established to be like, what small incremental goals do we want to make and how are we going to measure them? Tanisha's been like, a back end with DGA for us to be able to measure and get that sort of in sync and really start looking at data. I mean, Pam, I'm glad we can serve you in that regard too. So yeah, now just to touch, because I realize we're a minute over time.
Yeah, we're pretty tight
And
on
this is
time.
good because no one wants to hear me talk through this, but we didn't want to leave a single thing out here. So this is just sort of like a reference sheet kind of summarizing disparate pieces of what we talked about today into some digestible nuggets that can be used. One thing I want to draw attention to before we wrap, Jim, is this piece here. Read this slowly and carefully when you can. It talks a little bit about something that we started to do that's part of our public relations work, where we are literally doing online community blog and influencer related channel invasion, whether they run a website, whether they're active on a social channel, whether it's an organization spearheaded by someone who you could call an influencer, it doesn't matter. We're basically creating a massive database of these connections, and we're distributing our client work through this network as normal course of business.
Yeah,
Or
no, I
press
think that's
releases and
smart.
announcements
Yeah.
and things like that. So we're probably,
Thinking of social media
it is
influencers as another
free.
form of PR. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. And it's free. So influencers are here. They're still on the list, but that's calling up, Mary J. Blige and being like, yeah, I've got 10 grand for you to talk about my thing. We don't have that money, and a lot of our client base doesn't. So we started doing this kind of more grassroots assembly of who are our contacts. It includes press and media as well, if we're not using a PR firm or PR web. But it really hooks onto our grassroots. And the thing to point out in here is read a bit online and read this. Chelsea is exploring this a lot and having a lot of success with the invite collaborators feature. It's sort of basically throwing your hat out there and saying, hey, would you want to collaborate on this post? We think it's going to benefit both of our organizations. And it shows in your timeline as your content and their timeline as their content. So it's sort of like the with or mentions thing. If you follow, the New Heights, Kelsey podcast and stuff, when all of those have brands that they affiliate with, that's what you see there. That's usually like a co-sponsored ad. This is like the organic version of co-sponsored advertising. So it's kind of relatively new. Chelsea's a huge fan. She was very enthusiastic about it yesterday. And I know we are using it with good success, solid so far. The rest of this is pretty self-explanatory, and I'll wrap up.
Well, we will share the we will share this full slide deck
Sure.
with everyone on the call today. Definitely want to thank Chris and Chelsea for all the work they did to prepare for this today. Want to thank everybody for coming and contributing. This was a really good, active conversation. I do want folks to know before we end the call that we have a few more of these virtual meetings and webinars coming up. We have one on Thursday around ethical internship models. We have another one on March 20th, which is centered around creating a thriving multi-generational work environment. Our Pride is leading its Arts Advocacy Day activities in DC on March the 26th. And we are also going to be scheduling our next Jersey Arts Marketers meeting will be in person. So this will be our first in-person meeting that we're doing since the lockdown. We don't have the exact date yet because we're just checking venue availability, but it will be at the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center in New Brunswick. It'll be a half-day workshop, so it'll be an afternoon workshop. So if you are traveling, I think we'll have enough content there to make it worth your time. Look out for information coming out on that very shortly. We're pretty close to having the date and theme down. So want to thank everybody for staying with us for a few extra additional minutes. And I hope you all have a really great rest of your day.